Hi all, Deb Tucker here with another Thursday tip and tricks. I thought I would address today one of the steps to help make your strip piecing projects more successful. If those of you who don't know strip piecing, it's a very efficient construction method where you're sewing strips together, subcutting them apart, and then arranging and rearranging them and putting them back together again. There are a couple key elements. You want to make sure that you have accurate straight strips. You want to make sure that you have an accurate 1/4 inch seam. But one area that's frequently neglected is the pressing. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. So I'm going to jump right in here because I've got a lot of information. So I hope you stay with me all the way through to the end. First thing I'm going to encourage you to do is get good equipment. We've had a lot of questions in the last couple of weeks. What kind of iron am I using when in my videos? The iron that's currently on my ironing board is by Reliable. It's a Maven 120 IS, and I absolutely love this iron. It's got all the features that I find important in an iron. One of the things that I find very important in an iron for me, because I sew a lot, is a tank, so that it's got lots of space for water. Second thing that I like, it's got very small holes in the plate, so it's not getting hung up if I'm pressing over a whole quilt. But the most important feature that this has, and this is what you should look for in your iron, is you want to have a trigger steam release. I don't know if you can see that, but it's not steaming all the time. It's set to a high steam level, but it doesn't steam until I press the trigger. So that's your key element for your iron there. Second thing for good equipment is to make sure you have a hard ironing surface. I did a video on this several years ago. It's in, if you go to our webpage, go to our video page, frequently asked questions, right around the 8.5 minute mark. I talked to you about how I make an ironing surface. This is super hard, and that's what's going to give me really well pressed seams. The other thing that you want to make sure to have is some type of pressing agent. There are a number of them out there. You can get your starch and your sizing from local grocery stores, but you can also get Best Press, which I get by the gallons and place in this, and from the soap company, there's a product called Flatter that they'll have great end results. Just pick the one that you like to use the most. I'm just going to leave the sizing up there for today. All right, so let's get started. One of the first things that I do with my ironing boards, especially when I'm doing strip piecing, is I like to have drawn lines right on my ironing surface. And I do that by finding the largest, longest ruler that I can, laying it on my mat, or on my ironing board, and using a permanent Sharpie marker. And then I take that marker, of course this has already been drawn, but I'll draw 2 lines, one on one side and one on the other. Make sure that it's permanent. You don't want any of this stuff bleeding back, and don't use a friction pen. That'd be worthless. You'd have to be doing it all the time. So after I've drawn those lines, one of the other things that I'm going to recommend that you do is that you set that with the iron before you put any fabric on there, because you don't want any accidents happening on an heirloom piece. All right, first trick. First thing, strip piecing. If you don't have to, use shorter strips. It's a whole lot easier. Second thing, when you go to, before you even stitch, I hit the ironing board. And what I like to do is I like to take my strips before I even do any stitching with them and make sure with the lines that are on my board that one of the edges of the strip lines up with the black line, give it a press, and then instead of pinning my strips, I like to layer my 2 strips right then and there at my ironing board. Line up those edges, give it a press, and I have no problem using steam right now. It's my trigger, my fingers on the trigger. But instead of using pins to do my stitching, I find that pressing the pieces together, keep them together fairly well, and I can then speed piece my at my sewing machine. I have a couple that are here, and after I'm done with the stitching, the next step in the pressing order is to set your seams. And this is when I will straighten again. Those lines are integral to success with your strip piecing. And so what I'll do is I'll take my piece, give it a press with that pressing agent. I'm going to use that liberally at this stage, and I'm going to take the strip and make sure that it is lined up right with one of the lines. Setting the seams helps to keep your lock your stitches together into your piece. After I've done that, then I have to decide which way I would like to press that seam. This is set up with the green strip on top, which if I wanted to press toward the green is the way that I would want to have that. Fabric on top is where your seam is going to be pressed toward. And I would use my fingers to roll that seam back and give that a finger press before I would come back and use my iron. But every time I give it that finger press and every time I iron, I'm going to take the strip and always place it along the straight of the grain. And once I've got that where I think I need it to be, before I leave the ironing station, just do a quick double check and it's all going the right way, so I'm good to go. And be consistent. If you're going to press toward the green, then always press toward the green. If you're going to press toward the gold, always press toward the gold. That'll come into play later on. Occasionally, I will take my strips and I will want to press those seams open. A good number of my techniques and tools do better with open seams. So I would use my pressing agent, press the seams. I've already done that on this one. But when I go to press those open, you will need to start your pressing from the wrong side. Flip it so that the seams are up. Use your finger and carefully and lightly press those seams open. Once I've finger pressed them open, then I'm going to come back with the iron and do the same thing. I'm doing a light touch here, not a very heavy one, a light touch to kind of guide those seams where I want them to go. My final press on this strip set is, oops, and here I've got one that I've managed to get a rainbow in. So I'm going to fix that right now. I'm going to do a dry iron first with the edge of the gold on the black and take this and reposition it so it's right on the edge of the gold is always on that marked line. And then, once I've done it with the dry iron, hit it again with my pressing agent and make a nice, stiff, actual, straight strip set that's going to make the rest of my project come out perfectly. Now, a couple other hints. Remember we talked about pressing your seams consistently? The reason you do that is because once you have multiple strip sets and you're making 4 patches, rather than subcutting each strip set individually, pressing consistently will allow you to take the 2 strip sets, layer them together, nest those seams, press them again. And if they've gotten wonky along the way, come back to that line and press again. But this way, when you subcut, your pieces are already paired up. It saves you tons of time when you're at your sewing machine sewing those pieces together. Another thing that you should do is if you are going to be cutting your strips at an angle, and your angle on this is a 45-degree angle. This is something I would use with my Lemoyne stars. Stagger those strip sets. Instead of starting with the green at the same level, stagger them so I can get the maximum use out of my strip sets. And these happen to be pressed open, which makes for a nice easy match when I'm putting these together as glazing Lemoynes. And one more quick trick is to don't put lots of strips together and then go to the ironing board. If you're going to put 3 or 4 or 5 strips together, put your first 2 together and do the pressing. Then add your third one and press again. Press in between each time, and every time you press, use those guidelines that you've marked and straighten, straighten, straighten. So these are things I'm sure are going to help you going forward anytime you're using strip piecing. Put some of them into play, give them a try, and let me know what you think. Till then, I'll see you next Thursday. Bye, everybody.